everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Alana and today you'll be joining me with my March wrap-up. So in the month of March I read a total of 7 books, and the month of March was a little bit of a mixed month for me, just reading wise. I read a 5-star book and then my ratings were sort of more middle ground for the whole month. And I don't know if that's because I tried a few different genres there, or if it was because of the whole COVID-19 thing at the moment and not being able to fully concentrate when reading, or if it was also because there was a few books towards the end of the month that I really wanted to finish but I didn't quite finish on time. So a little bit of a mixed month, but still quite a good month all things considered. So I ended up reading 2 YA contemporaries, 1 graphic novel, 1 classic, 1 sci-fi, 1 urban fantasy, and 1 mythology-based retelling type book. This was also a month where I actually consumed more audiobooks versus physical books, which isn't usually the case, but I have been enjoying audiobooks more lately because I have a longer commute time to work now. There were a few really good audiobooks in there too, so I will let you know those as we go along. Speaking of which, let's get straight down to it with my favourite book of the month, which was Only Mostly Devastated by Sophie Gonzalez. This book, I was not expecting to love this book as much as I did, mainly because it's a Grease retelling. So I don't like the movie Grease as it is. I think that it's a little bit outdated. It doesn't really hold up to the test of time. There's a few things in it that just don't mesh well with me myself, so not a huge fan of the original tale, but this was all sorts of good things. In this Grease retelling, we have a queer main character. It's also gender flipped, so we follow the protagonist Ollie as he meets his summer romance Will, and then because of certain circumstances they end up going to the same high school after they never thought they'd see each other again, and it all just spirals from there. This was a 5-star read for me. I also ended up really liking Lara in this story, and a few of the other side characters just really made this because it was so encouraging and diverse and just all sorts of good. So if you want a gender bent queer retelling of Grease, pick up this one because I know that you're gonna love it. Also, fun fact, this author is from a country town in South Australia, and so am I. Next up, we have my science fiction novel of the month, and that is Sleeping Giants. Now, forget who this one's by, but you'll be able to see it here, and this one I consumed through the audiobook, which was actually really, really good. You have a whole cast of voice actors in it, and just the way I'm guessing the book is told anyway, it really fitted well into the audiobook format, and I think that's because this one is comprised of like a whole bunch of files. So with Sleeping Giants, we are finding out the mystery of this giant structure that is slowly being uncovered throughout Earth. It's in bits and pieces, and we have a team that are going through some stuff as they're uncovering this giant thing. I really love the morally grey type structure of the characters in this, and also the discussions as well of what will we do to further humanity, and is it right to kill innocent people along the way if it's for this greater good. And it delved so deep into some human psyche type stuff, and I really loved it for that. I'm also really interested to reread this one now, just because I did consume it via the audiobook and I want to know if I still feel the same reading the physical book. I also think there is a sequel somewhere out there that I'm keen to try as well. And yeah, this one got 4 stars from me just because it was such a good production and I didn't mind the story either. It went to some weird places, but I really liked how it did that. Next up, we have one that surprised me with how it ended up capturing my attention, and that is Picnic at Hanging Rock. This was the classic that I read for this month, which goes towards my reading goals for the year, which I'll leave linked up above for you. And I also consumed this one via audiobook because with classics, I haven't really read a whole heap, so I thought if I was listening to it on my drive to work, I would still be consuming it because I sort of had to listen to it. But I was also pleasantly surprised that I ended up liking this one just because I didn't know if I would or not. In this one, if you haven't heard about it already, which you probably have, but we are at a boarding school in Australia and they go on a picnic to Hanging Rock and some girls go missing, and it's the mystery of what happened to them, who was involved, how could something like this happen as well to like a reputable boarding school, and yeah, it was a ride. It was weird and strange and enticing. So yeah, there's some old language used in it. I don't know if I would have been as fully engaged in it if I hadn't have listened to it via the audiobook. So props to the audiobook for keeping me interested. The voice actor also did an amazing job with all her different accents and her different characters. And yeah, I'm also interested to read the last chapter of the book, which was apparently chosen to be cut from the original story because it reveals something further towards the end there. I'm not going to say what because I don't want to spoil you if you haven't read this already. So I'll have to try and hunt that last chapter down somewhere. Also, the main reason why I wanted to read this was because I saw a little while ago of the adaptation that got brought out. It got redone again, and it had, what's her name? She's from Game of Thrones and The Tudors, and I'll put her here. You know who I'm talking about, but she is one of the main leads in it, and I wanted to read the book before I watched the adaptation, miniseries, whatever it is, just to see what I thought. And yeah, this one ended up getting a 3.5 stars from me, which was surprising for myself because I don't count myself as like a classics person, so this gives me hope to read further into the genre. Next up, I have Amulet #2, which is The Stonekeeper's Curse by Kazu Kibuishi, and this again was very fun. I enjoyed it just as much as the first one. Again, the art style is amazing. You can check out my thoughts for the first one in my February wrap-up, which I'll leave linked up there for you. For those of you that don't know, the first book in this was the first ever graphic novel that I picked up, and it was all sorts of good things, and now I'm very keen to continue on in the story. In this one, we get a little bit more insight from the villain's point of view and also like the war that's happening in it, and we get more about the stone or the amulet as well. So it's starting to further the storyline more, and I'm keen to see where it goes. I have the third and the fourth one on my shelves as well, so I plan to read one a month just to sort of stretch it out a little bit more for me so that I don't just smash through the whole series and then regret that I consumed it all in one go. So that's my plan. This one got 3 stars from me. I do like graphic novels. They are a more condensed story though, and I like to just completely deep dive into worlds and stories, but still a really fun read. And then we had my other YA contemporary of the month, and that is Monday's Not Coming. I'm forgetting to say the authors' names with these audiobooks that I consume because I don't have them in front of me. I know the last name of this author is Jackson. This one I had mixed feelings about, and I think that's because I consumed it via the audiobook, and in this case the audiobook was good, but I think I could have done with the physical copy more. I would say this one starts out sort of middle grade-y in genre, and then it goes more into YA contemporary as the character progresses along the storyline. And in this one we follow a young girl called Claudia as she is going to school and discovers that her best friend Monday has gone missing, and no one else seems to be worried about this fact, and the whole way through she's trying to discover where Monday is or what's happened to her, and it goes from there. I will say I wasn't really enjoying this one for about half of the way through. I just found the character naive and young, but then from about halfway onwards we really get into the thick of it, and man, there were some revelations and the story just started powering through from there. So would I recommend reading this one? Yes, but if you like something like Sadie, this is why I picked this one up in first place too, because someone said if you like this then you will like this, and I can see the comparisons between the two. I did enjoy this one more, but as we're talking about Monday's Not Coming right now, yes, read it, but be prepared for some triggering content is all I will say. Because I had sort of mixed feelings about this, and because I ended up liking the ending of it, it did get a 3 stars from me, which isn't a bad rating. It just means that I wasn't fully hooked at the start, but that it pulled together towards the end there. So hard-hitting contemporary with some stuff in it, try this. And then the second to last book that I have to talk about is Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. Now I also consumed this one via the audiobook, and I'm really glad I did because I am a contradiction. I love mythology and I love all the tales, but I always buy these bind up leather beautiful editions and then I never read them because I find out that short stories aren't really for me and the language is older and it doesn't really grip me. So with this one, I attempted to start reading it physically just with this, and I had to switch to the audiobook just to keep me entertained. And I'm glad to say that the audiobook is really good. Neil Gaiman himself narrates it. He puts on all the different sort of voices for the different characters. He gets into character really well, and it was a really enjoyable time. As you've probably guessed so far, this is just Neil Gaiman retelling the Norse mythology stories and tales, and it was a whole lot of fun. We hear from Loki, we hear from Thor. It was also interesting to see how the tales are originally, and then how something like Marvel has come along and plucked like little bits and pieces here from there to wind into their own stories, and where the original inspiration came from. So like I said, I'm not big on short stories, but I love mythology, so this one ended up getting a 3 stars from me. And if you're looking for an audiobook, this one was very, very good, so try it out. And then the last book of the month that I have to talk about is the urban fantasy one, which a whole heap of people are already talking about because it is Sarah J Maas's Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood. Okay. Where do I start? Let's start by saying that I have read all of Sarah J Maas's other works except for the Catwoman Soul Stealer one, which was part of the DC Icon series. And yeah, in the moment, I love her books. And then I finished them and I'm just like, was that 100%? And I think maybe I am outgrowing her writing style a little bit. So when I picked up this one, I was cringing a lot of the time, and not in a good way, but there was also parts where she hooked me again and I had to know what happened and I had to keep on reading because her writing style is very readable. It's just she can be very over the top as well. So if you haven't heard of House of Earth and Blood, this is a new series that Sarah J Maas is writing at the moment. This is the first book. In this one we follow Bryce, who is our main character party girl, who 2 years ago had to deal with the death of her friends, which was a very tragic murder type scenario, and now she's getting pulled back into that mystery and she has to team up with a fallen angel called Hunt as they figure out what actually happened, why it relates to the present day, and all of that. She herself is half human and you find out more about that as it goes along, and this is where I will say that Sarah J Maas is starting to lose me. She always has characters in her novels that are the most powerful that people have ever seen for the last however many decades, centuries, whatever, and here they are. Oh my god, wow. And she's done it in her ACOTAR series, she's done it in her Throne of Glass series, and I feel like she's just reusing plot points and characteristics, but in a new setting of urban fantasy, which yes, was cool, gave me mad Cassandra Clare vibes, but you've got to start doing something new because otherwise it's going to feel like you're starting to recycle little bits from your other novels, which there were phrases in here which I was 100% like, I have heard Feyre say that, or I have heard, Aelin refer to someone else's that, and yeah. Have I outgrown her? I am 70% going to say yes. Actually, 80% going to say yes. But will I still read her books? Yes, because she's really good at her plots, she's really good at her characters and also her found families and that sort of aspect, and she still hooks me. So I'm on the fence with her. This one got 3 stars from me. It was still a good book, and I know that some people are probably going to not like me, reviewing this more critically because she is so popular, but yeah, try something new with your characters, Sarah. And I'm gonna leave it at that. So those are the 7 books that I read in the month of March. My reactions were really mixed across the board, and I was pleasantly surprised by some of them and a little bit let down by others, but not a whole heap. And yeah, I mean, due to everything that's happening in the world right now, I can't really complain because I still had a fairly reasonable, normal-ish month. Having said that, I hope that you are all staying safe and healthy out there and looking after one another with your 1.5 meter distancing enforced as well, and I'm going to leave it at that. So let me know in the comments down below what you are currently reading, if you're liking it, if you're not, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!